Thank you all for being here and for supporting these two incredible artists that have no doubt already changed the world. And I would like to issue a comment from Nadya Tolokonnikova. Now, she's so sorry not to be here in person today, but as I'm sure you can imagine, given the facts of her life, that she has a personal situation that has come up. So she's not going to be able to join us live right now, but she is going to be larger than life on the screen behind us, and is very much looking forward to seeing you all virtually and to answering your questions and sharing parts of her experience with you. And this will be a question and answer format. We'll be asking questions of Judy and Nadya, and then at the end of that time, you guys will have a chance to ask your own questions. Two of you today, because you really have used your artwork as a tool to change society, and society is better because of the work that you both have done. So I'm going to ask a few questions and kind of alternate between the two of you. Sometimes I'll ask you both to answer the same question. The first one is for you, Judy. How did you guys meet? I mean, you're from two opposite parts of the world and two different generations. How did you guys come into contact with each other?
I have a gallerist in New York I sometimes work with named Jeannie Greenberg Rowaton. And she was on me about doing NFTs before the NFT world crashed. And I'm like, not. She said, listen, there's this company called Dementi. They really want to talk to you. So she set up a Zoom. Quite by chance, before this, I had read Nadya's book, Read It and Riot. And as I said in the film, I put Post-its on all these pages because it was like I could have said these things. Like, we don't want to live in a world where everything is about money and nothing is for the public good. You could say that has defined my life. So I had this Zoom with Dementi, and they had sent me a sample NFT, which I went, So I tell them, NFTs are all about money, and I'm all about meaning. And I think that's going to be the end of the conversation.
Recording in progress.
Go away. It's just like being on your computer, right? Hi, I didn't know you were coming. Yeah. Anyway, so they told me, without them realizing that I had just read her book, that Nadya and her partner John Caldwell were doing this project to try and bring gender equity to World Wide Web and the NFT world, which is the really bro world. Like only 5% of women participate in Web3. Now that was more up my alley. And so they said, would you like to meet her? So I'm like, yeah. And and they said, she's a fan of yours. I'm like, really? Okay, so they arrange a lunch. We were all in New York at the same time. And we met there. And that was the beginning of working together on What If Women Ruled the World, which we'll come back to later in the discussion.
So Nadya, I have a question for you. As far as your book and your journey into writing, could you talk a little bit about that, how you decided to commit some of your time? You do so many things, and I've witnessed firsthand how every single minute of your life you're working on something. So and it's something to change the world. I don't even know if you ever just take a break and do something for fun. I think every single action that you do is committed to making the world better. And so how did you decide to commit so much time to write a book?
First of all, I want to say that it's a big honor for me to be here. And I wish I could see you, Judy and Tonya, because I can see on my screen just my own face. So if there is any adjustment, we can do with this camera, that would be awesome. But also I can hear you, so that's I guess that's good enough. But let's see if we can do something.
Oh, she wants to see me. Okay.
Awesome.
Is that
Thank
better?
you. It's much better.
That's good, Nadya.
I really, really wanted to see you. So I'm really glad that life brought three of us together. And answering Tanya's question, well, I always loved to write, and I guess as a conceptual artist, I always loved to have freedom to use any medium you want, and sometimes writing is the best way to get your point across. I also happened to study philosophy. When I was a little baby, I was confronted by a difficult choice. I needed to choose who am I going to be in this life. So an answer that I'm going to be an artist would not suffice for my parents. So I had to pick something to study. And I picked to study philosophy. And when you study philosophy, you also write quite a lot. And so I just happened to love writing. And Read and Write happened mostly in 2017, when Trump got elected in the United States, and I was going a lot back and forth between Russia and the United States. And a couple of people who I liked and trusted asked me to write just a bunch of advices or my observations and experiences that I had while I was fighting one of the most dangerous dictators on the planet Earth. And hopefully it would be useful for people who think about how they can effectively oppose Trump in the United States.
You know, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I minored in philosophy in college. So I also had a grounding in philosophical thought. I think that's very interesting because your grounding in philosophy comes through in Read and Riot.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Well, back in the day, I know Moscow State University, one of the largest, universities university in Russia. You have to study for a few years philosophy, and after that you can choose what you're going to study after. So I think philosophy is just a good entry way for everything else, because it helps you to understand much more about yourself and about the world you live in.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense to me. I didn't know that about you, Judy, but it makes perfect sense because both of you go so deeply into the topics that you address in your work, with such intellectual with such a sharp intellect that you're able to synthesize various different fields to help solve the problem. You can identify a problem, and you can create an artwork that suggests a way forward. And I think that can only come with such a profoundly intellectual approach.
Well, see, I mean, I'm glad Nadya, of course, experienced this in Russia, where clearly the education system is different, but I'm really glad I went to college at a time when you went to college to learn to think and not to get a job.
Right, right.
Okay.
Okay, so now I have a question for both of you, and that is, how have your relationships with other women of older generations than yourselves influenced your own lives and artistic practices?
Okay, Nadya, I thought since I'm older, I'd go first, and I would talk about having had Anais Nin, the diarist, as my mentor, and then I've gotten a lot of letters over the course of my career from young women who told me that I was a real role model for them, which has meant a lot to me because except for Anais, I didn't really have a lot of role models when I was young. But there are only, from my point of view, 2 young women artists I have tried to do for what Anais did for me, and she used to call me her radical daughter. And you know, that's sort of how I see you, and also Swoon. And in both cases, I have tried to be available to you for guidance or in friendship and encouragement, whatever you needed. Same with Swoon, because I was, this is going to come as no surprise to people who know anything about my career, I was a very brash young woman. And Anais Nin was the most gracious human being I'd ever met in my life. And she taught me about how to be in public in a way that wasn't obnoxious like a lot of the men who, like, she got me involved in an alternative school that came out of UCLA. A lot of professors from UCLA formed it. I can't even remember the name of it. This was in the 70s. And they wanted to launch this school. There were people it was the kind of mentorship school with people all over the world. And they were launching this school at a house in West LA. And they had invited me, Anais, Buckminster Fuller, and Lawrence Durrell. Wow. So Anais and I, of course, get there on time. Which was supposed to start at 2 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, Lawrence Durrell arrived. And he was all right. At 4 o'clock, Bucky Fuller arrived, strode into the room, took over the space, started walking back and forth, and like, when I was 27, I did this, and when I was 37, I did that. I mean, he's going on and on and on. And I was mostly upset because Anais was his generation, and I thought he was being unbelievably disrespectful to her. So with my heart in my stomach, I raised my hand and waved it around like I used to have to do in college because my male professors wouldn't call on me. And I said, Mr. Fuller, can anybody else speak? I mean, that was like, you can't imagine the tension in the room. So he stopped, and I said, I really think it's offensive the way you're acting. It reminds me of my male professors in college. It was so authoritarian, so like, I didn't say patriarchal because those words weren't there then, but that's really what he was being. So of course the audience is like besides themselves. And who's the worst? The women. They're like, oh my God, how could you, jump up. So Anais stands up and she points to him and she says, here you have an example of the rational and the objective and the masculine. And here you have an example, and she points to me, to the emotional, intuitive, and feminine. And I thought the purpose of education was to bring these together. And she sat down. I was like, so later on she called me up afterwards, and she said, I hope I wasn't too, like mealy mouthed or something. That's not what the word she said. I said, are you kidding? You saved my ass. But also it was a demonstration of her grace. And I thought to myself, I want to learn how to be like that. Your turn.
I was growing up in the world that was made by men and for men. So for me, having strong female role models meant really a lot. I started to identify as a feminist when I was really a little baby because I thought my teachers are amazing, strong matriarchs, and we all only learn about men's history. That was weird, and it was the first step for me to identify as a feminist. So growing up, having strong female role models is incredibly important. Tanya, you mentioned Marina Abramovic. That's a really great inspiration on me. And interestingly enough, how my personal attitude towards her career changes over time. So when I was 17, I was well, I guess obnoxious, young, radical feminist. I was like, well, it's amazing what she's done, but I really wish she would never work but she would never start to work with institutions because I wanted to see her existing outside of institutions and building her own path. So then later,
Is she talking about Marina? You should explain to everybody who they are.
Okay. So Judy just mentioned that we should explain who Marina is.
Abramovich, so everybody knows.
Yeah. A very important female artist.
Performance artist.
Yes.
Marina Abramovich.
Yes.
You should Google
also
her.
a very brave woman who was an inspiration and a role model like Judy to Nadya when she was making her own way. Okay, so go ahead.
That's right. So then fast forward, I'm 33 now, and I really understand why Marina Abramovic at some point of her life decided to work not just outside of institutions but also rely on them. Mm-hmm. So weirdly, it's a very similar situation as happening with my own mother. I didn't understand a lot of her like when I was a kid, I hated her decision to make money because I thought you have to live outside of capitalist economy, and I was like wildly anti-consumerist. So now when I'm 33, I understand why she did it because I have a daughter of my own, and I know that you just sometimes have to provide. And there's Judy, and I'm really honored to be here with you today. Wish we could be in person, but we have many more opportunities. Judy taught me so much, and well, long before we got to meet, and especially after, with her incredible guidance and patient advice, and just an example. And if you didn't happen to read Judy's books, I highly recommend you to read them because it really reshaped the way I see myself. I carry myself, especially when it comes to the interactions with the art world. But I guess in general, because Judy taught me persistence, never giving up, and also long-termism. Because as a young radical, I wanted to achieve things here and now, and it takes incredible, like another level of courage to face the fact that some of the things that you want to see might not come in 10 or 20 or even 30 years, but you still have to you still have to perform incredibly difficult and hard work that you're doing and face all of the consequences. Thank you, Judy, for guidance.
Well, just let me say, I see so much of my young self in you. I was exceedingly unsophisticated and naive about the world. I did not understand, well, I mean, you've had direct experience of how cruel the world can be through what happened to you. But still, there's this, I don't know, purity or innocence about you and this commitment to make change above all. And that's very rare. And the thing I didn't say about why I've chosen you and Swoon to try and provide whatever I can for you is because the singular thing that's missing in young people today is courage. When we were at your show at Tonya's and we were watching the Pussy Riot videos and seeing young people confronting power, I thought about how America needs Pussy Riot. And young Americans need the courage of Pussy Riot.
And to touch on what you were saying about existing outside of institutions and how you wanted Marina to exist outside of institutions and be a pure social practice artist, I just want to comment that you've mentioned to me before that you also wanted to be that way yourself, but that she had an impact on you by saying, no, your work can actually reach more people if you materialize the actions and performances so that they can be shown in museums and galleries around the world. And you know, I think that that is something that is very good advice from a mentor who is a generation older and also a woman. Because sometimes I think that women are, in an attempt to try to be so pure with their intentions, they don't want to do so badly the thing that they perceive as less pure by, you know, having an exchange of income, an exchange of money for the artwork. But you've really taken that power back as well and said, and you can do both. Right?
Yeah, but see, I was just like that. When I was working on the dinner party, there was this woman who was a collector, because we used to have visitors in the studio, and she asked about buying a dinner party test plate. You know what my response was? How much would it be? I said, you expect me to equate my art with money? But also, I was going to say about galleries and institutions, I mean, it's not often, Nadya, that a show opens and there are 1,000 people waiting in line to get in. And the same thing happened at Jeffrey Deitch's in LA.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a demonstration of how far art can reach.
So,
Really, and I mean, I started to, well, I guess the more experience you have, the more balanced view of the world you get. And that being said, I totally adore a 17 years old version of myself. I love that radical, and I would never turn my back on her. But I think, you know, just get to know, like, you know, when you're 17, you think about gallery or a museum, you think about abstractions. Then you get to see real people, and then you see, like, oh, there's Tonya, there's someone else. I mean, like, there's, like, you know, Brooklyn Museum, and there are good curators in Brooklyn Museum that worked with you, Judy, to make your dreams come true. So you see that sometimes even the most radical art can find allies in institutions, and it works good both for the art and for the institution.
and for the world. And it allows you to be fearless on a larger scale.
Except institutions can also totally block art. I mean, the institutions, and even now the mainstream institutions that don't own my work, the art world, for a long time, the institutions did not act as what they're supposed to be, a distribution system for art. I mean, they basically tried to kill me and my work. So institutions, there are now a younger generation of people, male and female, running institutions with different values than like the woman who runs MoMA. I mean, having a woman in place does not guarantee diversity, feminism. In fact, I mean, I'm personally now working with 2 male curators who are both basically feminists and in positions of power, and using their power to promote diversity and feminism. Like Bell Hooks said, you don't have to be a man to be a patriarch, and you don't have to be a woman to be a feminist.
So
100%. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the concepts that you all deal with in your work. Even though you're coming from different generations, different sides of the planet, a lot of your work has dealt with the same themes that we experience and that are causing a crisis situation right now, like climate and the environment.
And gender equality, how about that?
Yeah. So would you like to start, Nadya, with talking about your We Need a New Earth, which I'm very happy to say that the Museum of New Mexico is acquiring. And we're very happy to have your work in our new museum downtown in the rail yard, the new Contemporary Museum. So can you talk a little bit about the way that that work came to be and how you ended up in the forest doing that work?
It was 2018, 2019, it was the winter. And it was really difficult time, and just another difficult time in history of Russian activism, when people like me practically could not leave the house without either getting arrested or assaulted, or ended up in some other kind of trouble. So I wanted to continue my practice. I wanted to continue my art, but Moscow, which was my home, was just too dangerous and uncomfortable and not cozy. And getting out in the streets of Moscow, I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel brave. So I was dealing with this, I guess, an episode of depression, apathy, but I wanted to still create art. So I decided to change the location, and I rented a house 2 hours away from Moscow. And we've decided, me and my partner at the time, who happened to be abusive and toxic, which didn't help as well. But anyway, so be careful with choosing partners. So I decided, with his help, to create this series of banners in which I was quoting the older generation of Moscow conceptual artists from the 70s, 80s. They were not able to do their work openly because they would be labeled as degenerative art, would be sent to institutions, jails, beaten, harassed. So they had to retreat to forests and fields in order to be able to create work that they wanted to create. And so this work is an homage to work from 70-something that I was growing up as an artist, really influenced by. So that's why this Soviet aesthetics. That's why these banners directly send you back to the Soviet times. They're velvety, they're red. And We Need a New Earth, this topic came really natural to me because I'm from Norilsk, which is a really polluted place. And one of my earliest entryways to activism was through environmentalism. Because I started to ask myself why the snow in my city is black. I knew it's not natural. I knew someone is to blame for it. And I was investigating who is to blame for it. Well, what a surprise. Men with money. So, and Beneath the New Earth is, I guess, a little bit sad, a little bit ironic, because it just reflects on the fact that we polluted and destroyed this earth to the point that we almost like need a new one. But obviously it is ironic because we don't have another one, so we just have to take care of this one.
Yeah. And Judy, about that same time was when you started dealing with those same issues in the end.
When did you do that?
2018.
Really?
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, 18, that's right. You know better, Tonya.
Tanya's talking about a series I did from 2012 to 2018 called The End, a meditation on death and extinction. And the first part explores mortality, which is kind of a taboo subject, therefore right up my alley. But the second part, we can't really do anything about our mortality. We're all going to die. But the second part deals with what we're doing to other creatures. And that is something we can do something about. And that was the much more painful part of the project. It was excruciating because I learned so much about not only how hideously we treat other creatures on the planet, but the scale at which we do it. So, for example, there's one image called Fin, about the finning of sharks, for shark's fin soup. And when sharks are finned alive, and then they can't swim, and they can't hunt, and so they sink to the bottom of the ocean and they suffocate to death. But here's the thing, we do it to millions of sharks every year. Millions. It's the scale that was so painful, excruciating to confront. And like Nadya says, we can't make a new Earth. We only have one Earth, and we better do a better job of taking care of it and its creatures, or we're doomed, man. Okay, that's all I have to say.
And speaking of domination of other creatures, let's talk about the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Because I'm hoping that you two, who, in my opinion, are the two people who can make art that would help reverse this downward spiral that we are confronting right now as a society. What ideas do you have about how you could use art to help women get agency over their own bodies back?
Well, I mean, we have to look at Roe v. Wade as part of a whole assault on all the changes of the last 50 years. I mean, it's not an isolated act. It's the result of decades of right-wing planning and agitation while the left argued about adjectives and whether you're woke or not. I mean, really, we have been asleep at the wheel. And for like Donald and me, who came of age in the 70s, in the middle of all the social rights movements, Donald was a anti-war activist, the anti-racist, Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement, Cesar Chavez, and the Hispanic and the labor movement and the feminist movement, and the belief that we were really going to transform the society. And now watching all that be steadily reversed. And not just here. I mean, it's like the post I did on my Instagram after I saw Nadya's show. She has this little, one of her pieces is about art's going to kill patriarchy. And so Donald and I and Nadya and her partner John took a picture together, standing together against patriarchy as manifested by Putin, the Taliban, and our very own Supreme Court. I mean, this is part of a whole global pushback that, I mean, where is there a place for art in this? That's what I think the question is. Mm-hmm. I mean, art can't change the overturning of Roe v. Wade. All art can do is educate, inspire, empower. The only thing, honest to God, the only thing I can think of is for there to be Pussy Riot in America. Like Nadya says, everybody can be Pussy Riot.
And everybody should.
And if that doesn't happen, I actually cannot believe what an absence of radical activity there is in America. It makes me ashamed, given the radical, and you know, marching, I mean, already marching is like, fine, you marched, and you Instagrammed yourself marching. So I do not know. Fortunately, I'm on the way out, and it's going to be young people who are going to make that decision about what the future is going to be. It's going to be young people.
Okay, Nadya, what's the plan?
Well, I guess let's wait for American Pussy Riot chapter. But I really love what you said, Judy, about you know, art can only do so much. You know, I really hate when artists are playing messiahs and say that, you know, what they're creating is totally going to change the world. I mean, it can inspire a few people. It's a part of a bigger movement. And I think what Judy said, and I totally agree, we're lacking this bigger movement. So what we can do as artists is just to plant these seeds, hoping that these seeds are going to grow into something. They might not, but I do think it's a good time to unite. We have very clear goals. Like we have, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we have very clear goals and the world that we want to live in. And I did experience firsthand a lot of inner struggle in the leftist movement. Well, a lot of leftist people in the United States and Canada hate me because they believe that I am a project created by Hillary Clinton. So I don't even know what happened exactly with the American left. So they pushed themselves to such an extreme. So they almost mirroring the worst of the like alt-right agenda with like deeply what do you call this thinking when you believe that the earth is flat? This type of thinking is called, well, I guess it's like magical thinking. It's like conspiracy theories. That's right. So they don't look at the facts and they don't want to discuss, like, you know, they come up with 5 goals that want to accomplish things like, you know, having body autonomy, healthcare for all, education for all, what else? I mean, like gender fluidity for those who chose so. So it's like really clear and really simple. And then we just work together to achieve this goal. No, instead, we're accusing Pussy Riot of being paid by the State Department to destroy Russia without any evidences of that being the fact. So I think my role as an artist and as Pussy Riot is to keep my eyes open, keep being naive in a good way, keep hoping for the best, keep building utopian futures. And I think one of the roles of artists today is to think about what's going to happen 50, 100 years from now. So I guess it's a good segue to our project with Judy. What if women ruled the world? Based on Judy's amazing projects, and I'm super happy to be a part of. And this is a series of questions that Judy poses to help people to imagine what is the world that they want to live in. Because I think at the moment when you have this positive future, a positive version of the world and clearly defined goals, you stop fighting because there is no, you're not going to give yourself a favor by fighting with your own comrades.
That's right. I think we need to open to questions.
Okay.
But I just want to say one thing about art. I couldn't agree with you more. That one of the complicating factors of what's happened to art is art has been so co-opted by money that artists don't think anymore about the power of art to change the world. They think, how can I get in a New York gallery? And that, for me, is a repudiation of the entire history of art. Like during this Nazi era, there were so many artists, many of whom lost their lives as a result of it, but there were so many artists who were making art of meaning and standing up against what was happening through their art. So I couldn't agree with you more about reclaiming the power of art.
Amazing, you guys. So should we take a question from the audience here first or from online audience? Let's do from the floor first. Okay, yes.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Paul Zursay. I'm from Albuquerque. Actually, in the Albuquerque neighborhood. My spouse, Kate, lives in Paris. The question would come from what I would call the departments of hope and prediction, and that is on the title of the presentation, what if women ruled the world? What are the chances that women are going to rule the world in get here some timeline or a little hope for the future and your little hope and a little prediction?
I think one thing that's really important is both Nadya and I in our project, what we're after is gender equality. And the questions in What If Women Ruled the World, which has now become a big digital quilt. There are people all over the world who have been answering the questions. It has more to do with thinking about some of the challenges we're facing, like would the earth be protected if women ruled the world? And would there be equality if women ruled the world? And how do we get there? If there are enough people thinking about it, that's a very positive step. It's kind of like the idea, really, we've gotten answers from 8 countries already. And it's just spreading and spreading because it seems there are a lot of people who are thinking about this and have no forum to discuss it. But the most hopeful thing I read lately was a biography of, Donald will maybe correct me, I think his name is James Lovelock. He was an idiosyncratic thinker. He was one of the creators of the Gaia theory. And he lived a very long time, and he was very hopeful. And this is why he was hopeful, because he believes that Gaia, which is the earth or the life force, if we do not knock off what we're doing, will simply slough us off and continue. So that sort of puts the fate of the human beings in our hands and not the fate of the planet, which is really daunting, right? If we're stupid enough to let ourselves be sloughed off, then we deserve it, right? Yeah, okay, Nadya. Do you want to address that?
I think I missed half the question because I think the computer's turned away from the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think let's just move on to the second one, and maybe you can turn the computer towards the person who asked the question.
It was about hope. Is there anything to hope for?
I love Gaia. I read a book a year ago about Gaia, and definitely really hopeful about it as well.
So Nadya, this one is for you from Instagram. Have you had any creative ideas you liked but decided not to use in your art, and what made you put them aside?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Tons of them. I have so much unreleased art. It's insanity. I probably have 90 or 95% of things that I do remain unreleased for various reasons. Sometimes it's just because, it's a side effect of doing very politically engaged art, because sometimes it's just not important anymore to address an issue. If you take too much time to create an art piece, then it's not relevant anymore. So there's that. Sometimes things develop in a way that it's not ethical anymore to release a piece that you wanted to release. So, for example, when the war in Ukraine just started in 2014, we came up with an idea of an art piece that was pretty radical. It was an art performance. And then Putin annexed Crimea, and then Putin's forces they downed the plane, and around 300 people died. So it was just such a tragic situation. So I realized that the form that we want to express ourselves, it was just still very old school Pussy Riot performance with balaclavas and dances and dresses. It wasn't right for that moment, and I think it's very important it's better to stay silent than to do something that is not suitable for the moment, at least for me as an artist, as a political commentator. And often it's just pure self-doubt and not just, and I think it's important that I'm being really honest about it, because a lot of people look at me and they might think that, oh no, Nadya is so confident, but no, sometimes I just look at what I created and I decide that it's just not good enough, and sometimes it's subjectively not good enough, and sometimes it's just purely self-doubt and self-criticism that it's me from inside, and imposter complex that I think we all know about, but I think it's more women suffer from it than men.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely,
yeah.
Yes. Having worked with hundreds and hundreds of women over the course of my career, it's and I've also worked with a lot of men, and oh, that's the greatest idea, I'm gonna make it huge, and the women are like, oh, I'm not so sure it's good, and I'm gonna make it little.
Okay, next question.
I just wanted to quickly say, and I think this is probably true of a lot of women my age.
Could you introduce yourself first?
I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Rada Potts. The dinner party changed my life. I saw it when I was in college in Cleveland. And it was so unlike anything I'd ever seen before. And I learned that women could be important, and that women could state their truth and be bold and actually do things that were controversial. I had nothing, no role model like that, nobody in my life. And it really affected me, and I just wanted to thank you so much, because it allowed me to go into a predominantly male field where I had to stand up for myself. And truly, if I had not seen that work of art, I don't think I could have done what I did in my life. So I really, really want to thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. That's what Nadya, but see,
And,
that's what Nadya and I believe in, the power of art
and it
to
does
make
have a
change.
power.
Right,
And you
that's
may
what
be
we
able
believe
to do
in.
something. You may be able to do something that would speak to young people, that would move them, because Americans are just, I don't know, either too afraid or too complacent now to make change. And maybe art can help them do that. And the question I have for both of you is, how do you react to the environmental protests in the art museums? And if it was let's say it was a dinner party. Let's say somebody went and smashed it all to bring attention to an
They
obvious...
didn't smash it. They didn't smash it. They didn't damage any work of
I'm
art.
giving a hypothetical. No,
But
no,
it's not a fair comparison because they
Okay.
didn't
I
burn, they didn't
understand
smash
they were old
anything.
bastards and threw stuff on it. I'm just saying, how far do you think that kind of...
I think
Do you
it's
think
a
there's
career.
any
I think
limit?
it's a career move. I think it has nothing to do with making change, because you know where they should be throwing red paint on Chevron and Enron, the fossil fuel producers, the animal factory farmers. There's plenty of places. Art is not the right place for that kind of action. I don't know, maybe you disagree with me.
I volunteer my art pieces to be thrown things at. I've been there. I'm fine with it. But I mean, I understand your point. I mean, like, I totally would love to see them throwing things at Chevron. But I really like that they try to be considerate and do not actually destroy the work of art. So it's like almost like a spectacle to attract attention. And the fact that we're talking about it right now shows that they succeeded in attracting attention. And so today, at this hour, I'm volunteering my artworks to be thrown things at.
Oh, wait, 1 second. I think I need to take one from the online audience.
Hi, Tessa.
Okay. How do you block the negativity to stand strong and firm in your own power? What do you do with self-doubt?
You suck it up and you put one foot in front of the other. What? Nadya, what do you do?
Exactly. Couldn't say it better.
Yeah.
It's like, I know, it's like what you said. People always think you're so confident, never suffer from self-doubt. Ha ha! Right? It's courage. It comes back to courage.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Introduce yourself, Tressa.
Hi, I'm Tressa, Tressa Berman. I wanted to ask you about the writerly parts of your art production as writers. It just kind of occurred to me, what have you considered doing a collaborative writing project, in like the intergenerational feminist manifesto, art manifesto for our times?
Let me see. An idea for us to do more work.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Tressa, but I mean, I would love to do it. I think it would be fantastic. I don't have enough time.
I'll ghostwrite it.
No, you'll ghostwrite it. I mean,
Well, I think
it's a
our
great
film
idea,
that
actually. Huh?
I think the film that we created together is the first approach.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Did you hear the question, the whole question about
Yeah, she heard
writing
it,
an art
yeah.
manifesto?
Okay,
Okay.
I'm tired. I'm old.
Okay. Does that mean we have to end now?
Yes, because I have to sign books. Nadya, because she's ill, fortunately signed book plates. So everybody who buys Read and Riot, and I recommend you read it, gets her signature in it, no problem, okay? But I actually have to sign.
Okay. And one thing about your question is Read and Riot is kind of a framework for that manifesto. You can use it as a playbook for creating your own revolution.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just one more. You can get up and walk or something.
But you have to also, you also have to introduce yourself.
My name is Margaret, and
Stand up.
your comment about being appalled regarding the lack of radical activity in our public activity in our current culture, it just makes me think that I just want to ask myself daily, and I hope that other people decide to ask themselves daily, like, what can you do every day, every minute, that's going to contribute in some small way that could become a big way?
You can study revolution in the past.
Yes, and I also think there are a lot of really small actions. I feel like we come from, at this point, a really spoiled culture.
Yeah.
And I think we got to ask ourselves, what do we got to give up? What do we got to change? What do we got to adjust? What do we got to be willing to sacrifice a little bit? Even little things like I drove myself here in my car by myself today. That was a pretty selfish choice because I could have made other arrangements, but it was convenient for me, and I made that choice. But we make choices like that every day, all day. I've had a conversation with people over the years about the encroachment of Walmart and all the big box stores, and my response is always, because I generally avoid them because I hate them, if you keep patronizing them, they will soon be your only choice.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
And I think we're really arriving to that point. And so I ask you to ask yourself, what do I need to change?
Except one of the things that's really, you should go see the show at Tonya's Container in Santa Fe and look at those videos of Pussy Riot, because change, no matter how well-meaning individual acts are, change only comes from people acting together. I mean, when you see these young people with baklavas on their heads, men and women, standing up to power, making fun of power. I mean, it's just so moving. I mean, didn't you think so, Apollo? Unbelievable. It's like, where is our Pussy Riot? If you go see it, you're going to ask yourself the same question, I'm sure. It's like, how courageous of them, how brave of them, how admirable of them, and of you, Nadya.
Thank you, Judy. God bless you.
Okay, book signing.
Okay.
Nadya, you were amazing last night!
She was.